Hello, how is everyone doing tonight? Always a pleasure to talk to you. Thought we would just hop on and have a late Friday evening conversation. Glad you are all here with me. I want to get the light better, right? I think we need to do a little bit better than that, right? With our lighting, how are we doing there? Well, all right, that's what we're gonna get. That's what we're gonna get. Okie dokie. Well, glad you all could join me for a great conversation. Yeah, a lot of things are happening tonight. Actually, tomorrow we are going to be having a web conference with some of the people that are involved in building the Center for Political Innovation. The link is below. It'll be streamed live on this channel. So if you are one of the participants in the conference, thank you very much. If you are going to be able to watch the conference, that'll be great. We'll be able to answer your questions. And if you want to be part of planning future conferences, shoot me an email. I'm very excited about it. It's going to be great. We're going to hear some music, different musicians. We're going to hear some different speeches from people. I'll be giving a keynote presentation. There'll be a Q&A, which will be answering not only questions from the chat, but also questions from the participants. It's going to be great. So I hope you all tune in tomorrow, 7 p.m. Eastern Time. We'll be doing it, and it's a good crew of folks. There'll be people from Louisiana on. There'll be people from California who will be on the conference. There'll be people from just all over the country, Idaho, Georgia. It's going to be quite a group of folks, but it'll be good. Different presentations, different music that we'll hear, and it'll be just an opportunity to engage about the mission of building the Center for Political Innovation, CPI. So I'm very excited about it. So if you have not already made a point of clicking that link below and signing up to make sure that you come and watch the upcoming conference, this web conference of people interested in the Center for Political Innovation, now would be a tremendous time to do that. Be sure to check it out. Great stuff. So, folks, I'm glad you're all with us here tonight. Click the like button. Hit the subscribe button. Be sure to post this on Facebook. Be sure to post this on Twitter. Be sure to post this anywhere you feel like posting it, really. The more you post it, the better. Let me see if I can get the lighting a little bit better, right? Is that better if I move back? Is the lighting better? Not really. All right, Peter Coffin. Yeah, right. I had a great chat with Peter Coffin, and I was on Peter Coffin's live earlier this afternoon. Peter Coffin is great. I mean, his video that he just did on, he didn't just do it. It's an older one, but it's a great video about Malthusianism. Peter Coffin is great, and Peter Coffin is tremendous. I had a great time. He reached out to me after the hate campaign by certain people who will not be named was launched against me. He's been a victim of these exact same people, and he knows exactly how they operate. And then just recently, he and Angie Speaks and some other folks had me on the Low Society podcast, and that was a lot of fun. Earlier tonight, Peter Coffin, great guy, was live. I was paying attention. So that was a great conversation. I always recommend Peter Coffin's stuff. You really ought to check it out. He's a great guy. So folks, I'm going to jump into just kind of some quick overview. I don't have a big, long prepared speech, but, I just want to, go over a few things that we've noticed in the news lately. And then at that point, we'll do our roll call after I'm done, and then I'll answer your super chats. And I've got plenty of water, so we can go all night. And yes, we, as a channel, our community has reached 13,000 members. Applause, applause, applause. There are 13,000 subscribers to this YouTube channel. 13,000. So that is a big victory for our community. For everyone watching right now, that is a win for us. 13,000 subscribers, right? So, hey, let's double it. Let's get 26,000, right? Let's do it, right? We are growing. We are offering something here as a community that nobody else is offering. We have a very unique approach. We talk about these issues, socialism, Marxism, economics, world events, in a way that is not typically discussed. And that is pretty good. So let's keep building our community, right? The more you do to build this community, the better and the more high quality the product that we put out here on the channel will get, right? You all are just as much a part of this as I am, right? I mean, if I wanted to just sit here and talk to myself, I wouldn't need a phone, would I? I could just sit around and talk to myself. It's your super chat questions that really make this presentation really valuable. It's the interactions in the chat. It's the community that we build. It's the upcoming, the future of building our important think tank, the Center for Political Innovation. There's so many ways this is actually, this is a joint effort. This is a community here. And every time we hit another benchmark, hey, 13,000, good, great step forward. So I guess from here I'll just be jumping into some opening remarks. Send your super chats. I'll write them down, and then I'll start addressing them after we do our roll call. So, all right, folks. So let's just do a little bit of a roundup. Amy Coney Barrett. He's name dropping. His VP. Okay. All right. So Howie Hawkins, Leonard Peltier. All right, writing it down. Right, so today was the last day of the Amy Coney Barrett congressional hearings. And there were a lot of protesters. I saw that the Revolutionary Communist Party, the RCP, is playing a particularly big role in those protests. One of their members, who's named Sansara Taylor, who's one of their big spokespeople, was on television, and she was kind of, getting arrested and disrupting the hearings, as were a number of them. That's proceeding. I told you all about Indiana and Amy Coney Barrett and People of Praise. Watch the previous lives. I've gotten into who she is, where she came from, what's going on there. And I gave you a level of analysis and depth with that you're not going to get elsewhere. And I actually wrote an article that was just published. You can find it on my website about Amy Coney Barrett, as well as Mike Pence and Pete Buttigieg, and the political rise of Indiana. The state of Indiana is a very small state, but it seems to be a hub for the neocon wing of the CIA. I talk about the history of Hammond Baptist Church. I talk about Pete Buttigieg's father and his ties to the International Gramsci Society. And, you should check it out. Check out that article if you get a chance. That's what's going on there. And, people want to make this about Trump. They say, well, the election might end up in the Supreme Court. Trump wants to make sure he has a justice there. Democrats are threatening to pack the court. Yes, all of that is true, but we shall see what happens next. Now, in other news, it's being completely ignored by mainstream media, just completely ignored. Mainstream media is not making a big deal out of this. It's a big deal. The new Strategic Arms Reduction Treaty, the New START Treaty, is set to expire, right? Russia proposed to the United States to extend the treaty by 1 year. And the United States blew them off. Just completely blew them off. Nope. So, folks, the international, the intercontinental, the INF treaty, right? The INF treaty, what is that? The international, what is the INF? The international, the Intercontinental Nuclear Forces Treaty, the INF treaty, gone, right? At this point, also now, in addition to the INF treaty that's gone, we have the Clear Skies Treaty. The Clear Skies Treaty is gone. And now, the icing on the cake, the New START Treaty, the new Strategic Arms Reduction Treaty, is gone. Basically, the United States Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces, that's correct, yeah. So, with the Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces Treaty gone, with the Clear Skies Treaty gone, with the new Strategic Arms Reduction Treaty about to be gone, with the United States announcing it is not even gonna, entertain Russia's proposal to extend it for 1 year, we are almost back to full Cold War status. right? In the 80s, there was all that talk about nuclear war. People didn't know if they were going to wake up the next morning. Nuclear Holocaust. Yeah, all the morning after movies, all that. We are at the point where we, in terms of our treaties with Russia, in terms of the arms race, we could very soon, the treaties are just falling apart, one treaty at a time. One treaty at a time. Meanwhile, the USA, under Obama in 2014, the USA overthrew the Ukrainian government. The elected government was toppled. Now we have this fanatical anti-Russian government in Kiev. Now there's destabilization efforts in Belarus. We know that the U.S. State Department and the National Endowment for Democracy and all these NGOs are involved in trying to destabilize the socialist country of Belarus, where Lukashenko presides over a state-run, centrally planned economy, and the Communist Party is the biggest party. They're trying to destabilize Belarus, right? Now, Donald Trump, let's remember, went as far as sending lethal weapons to the fanatics in Ukraine. There's something called the Azov Battalion. The Azov Battalion, which is a group of very, very, very fanatical, extreme ultranationalists in Ukraine that use some symbols associated with fascism, and they're getting lethal weapons. They've got U.S. Military people training them. So what I don't understand, right? There's a couple. This is all very, very disconcerting. We're basically like revving up the Cold War again, right? What I don't understand is how can anybody in their right mind think Donald Trump is an agent of Russia? Okay, answer that question for me. Donald Trump has ripped up all the nuclear non-proliferation agreements, right? He's ripping up nuclear treaties left and right, destabilizing Belarus, sent lethal weapons to fanatics in Ukraine. But Democrats and the mainstream Democratic Party, Rachel Maddow, still want you to believe that somehow Donald Trump is an agent of Russia. This is like, what more does he need to do to prove he is not an agent of Russia? It's insane. And what is Joe Biden going to do? Right? If Donald Trump is soft on Russia and he's doing this, what in the world would Joe Biden do if he was president? If this means you're soft on Russia, you rip up all the nuclear treaties, you send lethal weapons to Ukraine, you destabilize Belarus. If that's what being soft on Russia is, what in the world is being hard on Russia going to look like? A central part of the campaign, Biden keeps pounding the podium with this completely unproven allegation about Russia, arming, paying bounties to the Taliban, which is ridiculous. Why would Russia want to destabilize Afghanistan? Why would Russia want to support, jihadists and fanatical Wahhabis in Afghanistan when they're trying their best to keep Central Asia stable? They would not be promoting armed violence and terror. They want to keep Afghanistan stable. It would just not be in Russia's interest to do that. So, but tell me, if Trump is supposed to be soft on Russia and he is like taking us every day like 1 inch closer to like World War III, what in the world is Joe Biden going to do when he's tough on Russia? This is disturbing stuff, very, very disturbing stuff. But nobody bothers to pay attention to that, right? It's not about what anyone does, right? It's all just about what you say, right? We live in this weird political universe where everything's not about action, it's about words, right? We're all supposed to hate Donald Trump because he uses nasty words. We're all supposed to, pee our pants with happiness because, Joe Biden uses the right words. Meanwhile, in terms of action, the Democratic Party, the Obama administration has proceeded over to carry out austerity, has made, it's just, politics is a world of illusion where words mean more than action. And actions get ignored. Meanwhile, even the words themselves are subject to interpretation. Now, folks, I was going over the town halls from last night. Folks realized there was no second debate between Trump and Biden. Now, there will be a final debate, but instead, last night, on U.S. television, there were two competing town halls. There was a Joe Biden town hall. There was a Donald Trump town hall. And the highlights, one of the big highlights from the Donald Trump town hall meeting that happened last night is Donald Trump. They asked him to disavow white nationalists and white supremacists, and he did. And he said, "I disavow them. I've always disavowed them. This is, I knew that, he went off on the moderator for asking him that. And then they said, well, what about QAnon? And Trump would not disavow QAnon. And he said he doesn't know enough about QAnon to disavow it. Doesn't know enough about it. And then he said he understands that QAnon is a group of people that are really against pedophilia. They're really against pedophilia. And, like, you want to talk about an understatement? This is, QAnon is this internet conspiracy theory that there are these Satan-worshiping pedophiles that have secretly infiltrated the government, and Donald Trump is leading this underground campaign to, like, rip up the secret conspiracy, and there's this person called Q that is posting on the internet. It's a nutty thing, but, well, I mean, as far as Trump's concerned, they're just a group of anti-pedophile activists. I mean, this is ridiculous. It's amusing, though. I mean, it's certainly amusing, right? Now, I was forced to think of, when you talk about this issue, right? I mean, I've done videos about the satanic panic of the 1980s, but this is particularly interesting because there was a book that came out 4 or 5 years ago, maybe a little further back than that. I read a review of it in Monthly Review magazine, which is like a Marxist academic journal. It was about the sex panic of the 1980s and 90s, and how, under the guise of fighting pedophiles, which, I mean, who's against fighting pedophiles? Child molestation, is anyone in favor of that? Obviously not. But under the guise of fighting pedophiles, there have been significant erosion. There have been significant precedents set, let me put it that way. For example, there was some town, I believe, that was doing preventive detention of people, convicted sex offenders on Halloween, right? The understanding was that, there's going to a lot of kids go out and go trick-or-treating on Halloween. So this town, every sex offender in the town was rounded up and taken to jail on Halloween night, right? Well, you can't arrest somebody for a crime they have not yet committed, right? And with no other crime would they have gotten away with that, right? I mean, it's like, if the Brinks truck is driving through the town, you can't round up all the convicted bank robbers for the day because the Brinks truck might be driving through town, right? I mean, in order to put someone in jail, they have to have actually committed the crime, right? And that there are many examples of that. And plus, I think that the review that I read made the point that, when you think of a pedophile, when you think of a sex offender, you think of some creepy old middle-aged white guy with glasses who's like, looking at kids out of his window or something. The reality is, though, that the majority of people who get hit with charges related to that tend to be young African-American men. And that there is a racial edge to it, and that there's a lot of situations where, where it has, it's about the demonization of the young black male, right? What's her name? Angela Davis wrote an essay about the mythology of the Black Rapist and how this idea that black men are just scary sexual predators who are out to rape white women, all the time. That propaganda from the racists, right, and that appeal to that fear of the black rapist, that is a big part of the prison industrial complex. That's a big part of the lynching culture. That whole thing, and that if you actually look at it, if you look at the way these sex offender laws are enforced, they tend to be enforced against men of color. Against black men, and they, the book. I'm trying to remember the name of the book, but it was quite interesting. It was a study of that. But then it gets weird, right? So at the same time that Trump is on there and he says, well, hey, QAnon, hey, they're just really against pedophilia, so they're fine, right? I mean, he doesn't know about, well, they're against pedophilia, so am I, right? And I mean, that sounds great. Who's in favor of pedophilia? Nobody. So you got that going on. But then, you got some very weird stuff going on, right? You got some very weird stuff going on. For example, you got that Cuties movie that came out. And many people have argued that the film itself got a bad rap. That the problem wasn't the film itself, the problem was how Netflix marketed it. And if you looked at the way Netflix was marketing it, it looked like they were trying to, appeal to pedophiles to watch their movie, right? I mean, it was just a lot of underage, prepubescent girls dancing in provocative ways, and it was like, look at this movie, all about this, and people felt like Netflix was almost marketing to pedophiles with the movie Cuties, right? And that all over the country, not just Tulsi Gabbard, but all kinds of local district attorneys and prosecutors and people, who have prosecuted sex crimes and track sexual criminals, they were absolutely disgusted by this movie, and they filed against Netflix. I think there was a grand jury in Texas that even indicted Netflix for doing this. So it's like, on the one hand, there was what people refer to as the sex panic, and right, there was that book Michelle Remembers, and there was all this, there was this idea that satanic pedophiles were kidnapping people all across the United States. That was a big thing, right, in the 80s and 90s. So then now, but then, and those fears still exist. QAnon is a continuation of that, paranoia, right? And that people talk about, in the 80s and 90s, there were a lot of daycares that were like, where the kids would, they would lead, the kids would testify against the adults, but not know what they were saying. These little kids would just start making up stories for police officers, and one thing would lead to another, and now they're more careful when they question kids, and there's all kinds of stuff going on with all of that. But at the same time, right, so now we've got Cuties from Netflix. It looks like it's kind of appealing to pedophiles. Meanwhile, there's a certain internet personality that I'm sure you all have read about, who there's some interesting stuff out there about him. You can Google and read some recent stuff that was published, and, some news blogs came out with some interesting stuff about this individual. Not my biggest fan. What in the world is going on? What in the world is going on? This is the weirdest thing. This is bizarre. I cannot make heads or tails of this. I really cannot make heads or tails of this. This is one of those situations where it seems like within the power structure of the United States, there are like 100 different agendas, and what in the world is going on? So QAnon, they're really against pedophiles. Netflix is doing this thing. A lot of people point out that Alfred Kinsey, the father of the Kinsey Report, they consider him the father of the sexual revolution, the Indiana-based researcher who was investigating human sexual behavior. He employed a pedophile's research. I don't want to get into the specifics of it. It's pretty gross, but there was actually a pedophile whose research was used, in the Kinsey Report, and that's pretty disturbing. So, what in the world this is like, can politics now get even weirder? Folks, I talked against the movie Cuties. Right, on Facebook. I said, you know what? I don't think it's right. There's somebody who's been a Facebook friend of mine for a while, for like years, unfriended me and sent me a message that by denouncing pedophiles, he told me that I was pushing focus on the family's agenda of equating gay people with pedophiles. And I was like, for real? Like, I never thought in a million years that denouncing the movie Cuties would lose me a friend. Somebody messaged me, unfriended me, and said that by denouncing the movie Cuties, I was helping focus on the family, right? Which is focus on the family. That's Dr. James Dobson. That's this like neocon fundamentalist group that operates in Colorado. They're based in Colorado, but they're all over the country. And they, and I actually remember Focus on the Family from when I was a kid. I don't remember them. I remember they had a cartoon called McGee and Me, which was this stupid kind of religious cartoon that my first grade teacher in a public school would show us these videos, about, focus on the family and read your Bible and obey your parents. And, they're like cartoon videos for kids or whatever. So that was Focus on the Family. So part of my U.S. public school religious indoctrination was focused on the families. McGee and Me, cartoons that I watched in first grade. But, so this person, because I criticized cuties, they said I was pushing the agenda of focus on the family, which tries to equate pedophiles with homosexuals, right? So I was dog whistling for focus on the family. That, I never saw that coming. Never in a million years did I think that someone was going to unfriend me because I criticized cuties. To say that I was somehow fronting for James Dobson, who is a big neocon, evangelical, Israel supporter of big wars around the world, advocate of free market capitalism, nut job, right? I mean, somehow my criticizing this movie on Netflix was, I don't know. And I'm not a fan of James Dobson at all. I'll tell you that much. When I was a kid, there was a parenting book called Dare to Discipline that was really popular in my era. It was this really, you should be really authoritarian with your kids. There was another parenting book called The Strong-Willed Child, and it's focus on the family. I've never been a big fan of theirs. Let me just say that. I grew up in an area where they were very influential. I'm from Ohio, not Colorado, but yeah, that was beyond me. That was really just beyond me. That one surprised me, but something's going on. I don't know. I don't work there. I don't have anything to do with that. So I have no way of knowing. So don't ask me about that because I don't know. But at the same time, this issue that I'm describing, I have no idea what is going on. I'm looking at this, the United States, it's I guess if you could say one thing that's going on right now is it seems that as a country, amid this pandemic, amid our politics decaying, amid our confusion about our identity, amid, economic crises, amid we are collectively as a country losing our minds right now. That is very, very clear. The entire country is losing its mind to some degree or other. We are going insane as a country. We are going insane as a country. We are just going bonkers as a country. We are losing our minds. This country is just, we're wigging out. We're going crazy. We are just, yeah. Now, one thing I also thought was amusing was when Donald Trump referred to QAnon, and he said, well, they're just really against pedophiles, right? That amused me because during the 1930s, the Communist Party USA, they were in their Popular Front period. And Trotskyites, anarchists, social democrats used to make fun of them and say that if you, and it was true that the Communist Party, if you ask people, what does the Communist Party believe? The typical Communist Party member would say, we're a group that's really against fascism. And that's kind of silly, right? It's like communism is a whole ideology, capitalism, socialism, workers and bosses. So, but in the late 1930s, during the second term of Roosevelt, during the time the Popular Front was being built, 1936, 37, 38, if you saw somebody from the Communist Party and you said, hey, what's the Communist Party all about? They would say, well, we're a really anti-fascist organization. And that was a point of ridicule. People used to make fun of the Communist Party about how stupid that was. Oh, yeah, you're really against fascism. It's but in a way, it was kind of smart, right? Because the orientation of the Communist Party during that period, right? You had the 7th World Congress of the Communist International in 1935, right? Let me back up. 1928, you had the 6th World Congress of the Communist International. And at the 6th World Congress of the Communist International, they declared class against class. They declared that the World Communist Movement was entering the 3rd revolutionary period, or the 3rd period. And that because the 3rd period was in ascendancy, it was time to organize a revolutionary movement, and it was time to expose the fake or phony leftists, right? Or people that were anti-communist that were left-wing. So they started calling social democrats social fascists, right? They started calling Trotskyites social fascists, right? And the idea was that the Communist Party would expose the other leftist tendencies, social fascism, and they would wage economic struggles in neighborhoods. They would fight for the unemployed to get economic relief. They would build labor unions, and they would build, a united front from below. That was 1928. So from about 1928 to 1935, this is as the Great Depression is setting in, the orientation of the communists was to not work with any other left-wing party and to accuse other left-wing parties of being social fascists, but instead to go directly to the hungry, starving workers and build a united front from below. All right, managerial. Bourgeoisie. Refuse. Soc Dem policies. That was the idea, united front from below. So then, however, 1933, you have Hitler who comes to power in Germany. You've got mass fascist movements in France, mass fascist movements in Britain, the rise of fascism in the United States. So at that point, the Communist Party, in 1935, they had their 7th World Congress. And this was the last Congress of the Communist International. There never was another Congress. The 7th World Congress of 1935. And they reoriented, they completely reoriented. They changed their policy to the Popular Front, right? The Popular Front, or the People's Front, right? And the idea was that capitalism is naturally heading toward fascism, right? So the communists have to be at the center of an anti-fascist coalition. And that would include social democrats, that would include non-communists, but it would also include capitalists that were the quote unquote democratic capitalists, that the ruling class was divided between the democratic bourgeoisie and the fascist bourgeoisie. And the communists would be the leaders of the class collaborationist coalition against the fascist bourgeoisie, right? That the ruling class was divided into two factions, and the communists would lead the fight against the fascist bourgeoisie. They would force the democratic bourgeoisie to enter an alliance with communist parties and to enter an alliance with the Soviet Union to defeat the Nazis. And that eventually happened, right? The Popular Front was a big success. It was probably the biggest success the global communist movement has ever had, right? I mean, all over the world, people knew the communists were the real anti-fascists, right? And after World War II, after the Popular Front was victorious and Hitler was defeated, communist parties surged in membership. In France, they elected, communist parties to parliament, and they were forced to step out of the government so they could get Marshall Plan aid. In Greece, communists were winning elections. In Italy, the USA had to set up Operation Gladio because so many Italians had wanted to vote for the Communist Party. And the communists really, the Popular Front strategy, it worked. It worked. The reason it worked was that in the lead up to launching the Popular Front, the communists already had thousands and thousands of members, right? They were huge millions, really. There were millions of communists all over the world. So when you have a mass organization like that, you can then enter an alliance. If you don't have that, though, it's kind of silly. And I do encourage people to actually go and read Georgy Dimitrov's, speech to the 1935 Communist International about the United Front Against Fascism. It's very good. It's very, very good. That's, it's weird. It's like Trump's like they're really, communists are really against fascism, like that. And then, and that was a strategy that worked for the communists at one point, to just play up that they were the anti-fascists. Roosevelt, and which president best describes, okay, FDR, which, alrighty. So that worked. But, the thing is, the Nazis were so hateable, all right? I mean, the Holocaust is one of the greatest crimes, probably the greatest crime in all of human history, right? Like the most well-documented atrocity, the most well-documented act of genocide, right? In addition to that, right, the Nazis were trying to take over the whole world. I mean, and death camps, and I mean, it's like you can't get more nasty and evil than the Nazis, right? They're just like the most hateable people. So, so I noticed that U.S. propaganda has shifted, right? And this is interesting. When I was a kid in the 90s, the way we were taught about the Holocaust was we were taught that the Holocaust was why the USA needs to constantly invade countries. This is different than what my parents were taught. See, my parents in school, what they were taught was this. This was the standard post-World War II, 1950s, 60s, and 70s narrative about Hitler, right? Is that Hitler was the extreme right, communists are the extreme left, and America is great because we are neither extreme left or extreme right. We just believe in democracy and freedom, right? And that, evil Stalin is the extreme left, evil Hitler is the extreme right, and America is great because we are neither of those and we believe in freedom. So stay away from extremists. Don't do anything in the extreme and just, live a pretty calm, tame life. That was Cold War American thinking, right? Nothing in extreme, nothing in excess, right? Because if you get too far left, you're a commie and they're bad and they kill lots of people. And if you get too far right, you're a fascist and they're bad and they kill lots of people. So therefore, don't do that, right? That was the narrative. And that communism was the main threat, of course, because communism had a huge amount of influence around the world, Soviet Union, China, etc. So communism, this extreme left ideology, was the main threat to freedom. This is standard, pretty standard, that's Cold War American thinking. However, when I was a kid in the 90s, and now, actually, even up to now, I think this is still how it goes, they teach something completely different. Right? What I heard in the 90s, I remember this, was, we learned about the Holocaust in school, and we were taught that the Holocaust happened because the USA didn't invade Germany. Right? I mean, we were taught that this evil regime took power in Germany, but the USA did nothing and just sat back. And so, next time, there's some leader around the world who's accused of crimes, we got to intervene, because look what happened when we didn't intervene. And of course, that whole narrative is just not accurate. The Nazi regime, the USA didn't sit back, right? Henry Ford was actively doing business with them. IBM designed the punch card machines that were used to keep track of the concentration camp inmates. Nazi Germany was not an anti-imperialist country. Germany was an imperialist country. After World War I, it had been stripped of all its colonies. So, the power of the German ruling class had basically been taken away, and they were kind of, they weren't allowed to have their own army, etc. And Hitler came to power as a Bonapartist, reasserting the power of the German bourgeoisie, and then started trying to re-seize territory. Right? And the Nazis, not only did they seize territory in Europe, they also seized territory in Africa. They entered an alliance with the fascist Japanese. So there was nothing anti-imperialist about the Nazis, right? Hitler was not Assad. Hitler was not Saddam Hussein. Hitler was not Iran. Hitler was not Venezuela. Hitler was not North Korea. Hitler was not leading a group of colonized people fighting an imperialist. And as the political crisis in Germany escalated in the 1920s, it became clear that if there wasn't some kind of fascist state set up in Germany, that there would be a communist revolution. So all the capitalists of the world, most especially the British, mind you, British bankers, British intelligence, set up and put Hitler in charge of Germany to prevent a communist revolution. And then the newly empowered German bourgeoisie started, cutting off and refusing to pay off its debts and rebuilding its military, and eventually we had World War II. This narrative that World War II is a case for humanitarian intervention, that's false. That is just completely false. And Spain, mind you, Spain was calling for humanitarian intervention. The people of Spain, who had created a republic, had an elected government, were seeing Franco wage a bloody, ugly civil war to overturn their elected government. And only two countries in the world came to the aid of the Spanish Republic: the Soviet Union and Mexico, right? And the rest of the world sat back, and the United States and Britain and a lot of countries carefully and covertly supported fascism in Spain. Now, officially, officially, the USA was neutral. They had the Neutrality Act in the Spanish Civil War. But, if you look at what was really happening, the USA was doing lots of business with Nazi Germany, a lot of aid and support was given to Nazi Germany, and then the Nazi Germans passed that on to Franco. So the USA, the idea that World War II happened because atrocities were happening and the USA was just too non-interventionist, that's a malarkey narrative. But that's the narrative that I was fed on TV. And that's the narrative all of us have gotten, right? It ignores the reality of the fact that Hitler was an anti-communist, that Hitler was installed by the Western capitalists to defeat communism, right? It ignores that, right? And it makes it sound like Hitler was just some kind of anti-imperialist state around the world. He was just Kim Jong-il, he was just Saddam, and he was committing all these atrocities, and we just didn't intervene, and look what happened, right? And I remember this, when George W. Bush was trying to sell us his invasion of Iraq, I remember there were a lot of times they would they would do these interviews on TV with people that supported the war, and they would say things like, well, look, Saddam Hussein, he's just like Hitler, and look what happened when we didn't, we let Hitler sit too long. Look what happened. Well, no, the USA didn't let Hitler sit too long. IBM designed the punch card machines. The Silicon Valley fascists designed the punch card machines, okay? I'm just telling you the facts here, right? Henry Ford, the guy who the money of the Ford Foundation started with, right? That guy got an Iron Cross from Hitler and did all kinds of business with him. Coke invented Fanta Orange so they could, sell Nazi drink, soda all over Nazi Germany. Hitler economy, we'll talk about that, right? The number of American corporations that were in bed with the Nazi state was massive. The Nazi state was not an anti-imperialist state. So it's frustrating, but this is the narrative that we get. But now, what I think is particularly interesting, and I almost don't want to say anything about this. I'm very, very, very tempted to not say anything about this. I'm not even going to get specific into it, because if I get too specific, that it's like it'll have the wrong effect. But there is this big attempt now. It's like to feed off of that narrative, right? So the narrative that we got in school, that the Holocaust happened because of the fact that the USA didn't invade a country, and that the Holocaust is the fault of non-interventionists, right? That's so wrong, and I've told you a bunch of times why it's wrong, so I'm not going to repeat myself anymore. But right? So that narrative, so now we've got this narrative that says, if you're a leftist who supports anti-imperialist states, you're a Nazi. Right? And this is the standard narrative now. If you are a leftist who supports anti-imperialist states, you're a Nazi. Now, how does that work, right? So, supporting anti-imperialist states generally means not wanting the U.S. government to go in there and kill all of them. The Nazis were a group of people who went around killing people and exterminating people. So how does not wanting the U.S. government to go around killing and exterminating people translate to being the same as people who want to kill and exterminate people? Doesn't make any sense, right? If you don't want the USA to keep arming terrorists in Syria that go into schools and go into churches and exterminate people, right? The Wahhabi fanatics who want to overthrow Assad have said that their goal is to drive Christians out of the country and to slaughter an ethnic group called the Alawites, a religious group, right? They want to persecute religious minorities. If you don't support people armed by the U.S. government whose stated goal is exterminating ethnic and religious minorities, that is what the U.S. government and its backed forces in Syria say they want to do. They want to exterminate Christians, exterminate Alawites. If you don't support them, you're a Nazi. Right? If you don't want a big, huge, colossal war with Russia, you're a Nazi, right? It's very, very interesting, this propaganda, right, that they have developed. And the other thing is, I actually will tell you, and part of the reason I'm talking here is I actually kind of enjoy, there are some very detailed screeds that have been published on the internet. where it's like it's a blacklist. It's like a McCarthyist blacklist. It's like every person who has ever, talked about, Ukraine or talked about Syria. It is like every person ever, right? And these are supposed to be like anti-fascist or red-brown documents. It's fascinating because it's like everyone that you read it and it's really interesting because it's like all these people that I have met and I have engaged with and I've spoken with, and like the purported claim of the text is that they are all Nazis. And it's like, Samira Khan, right? Miss New Jersey 2016, I think? Yeah, Miss New Jersey 2016. Do you think Samira Khan is a Nazi? Of course she's not, right? I mean, that's ridiculous. She's a Muslim American from New Jersey, right? Black Agenda Report. Yeah, there's a real Nazi website, Black Agenda Report, right? I mean, doesn't the name Black Agenda Report just immediately have you thinking of like white supremacism? Cynthia McKinney, Congresswoman Cynthia McKinney. Yeah, real Nazi there. And you read this, and it's like these documents that come out on the internet, right, that are like anonymous and they're just floating out there. It's like you read them and they're a collection of all kinds of people and trying to link them to each other, and they're all part of this vast, vast conspiracy of people who are all Nazis. Now, what's amusing, and sometimes these people will start coming after me, and what's amusing is it's like there's a level of like weirdness about them, right? So it's like they'll start posting like, in this year at this time, Caleb spoke to this person, right? And then in this year at this time, he spoke to this person. And then in this year at this time, he spoke to this person. And you listen to this and you're like, what? Like the people that I spoke to are nothing like each other, right? So I'll give you like 3 examples, right? So they'll say, which I did, I met with Alexander Dagan. Alexander Dagan is a Russian intellectual. He's a conservative, anti-imperialist Russian intellectual, traditionalist. He was a founding member of the Russian Communist Party. But then he I think for a while, he was part of the National Bolshevik Party, and now he runs the Eurasian movement. And he's a Russian intellectual, right? One of Dagan's main beliefs is that he argues that, as a traditionalist, as a conservative, okay, whatever, maybe. As a conservative, as a traditionalist, he argues that the past, the present, and the future are equal, that there is no historical progress, and that he is dedicated to these kind of Russian Orthodox traditionalist ideas, right? He draws from Julius Evola, and, that's Dagan, right? So I clearly don't agree with Dagan. I'm a Marxist. I believe in historical progress, right? I'm from the left wing, right? So, okay, so it's like they got me with Dagan. Then, right, they've got me talking to Webster Tarpley. Now, who is Webster Tarpley? Webster Tarpley was a leader of the Lyndon LaRouche movement in like the 80s and 90s who got kicked out. And now Webster Tarpley is he's one of the big leaders of the anti-Trump resistance, and he promotes Russiagate conspiracy theories. Now, I met with him in 2015. I think I met him a total of 1 time, or maybe twice, in 2015, when he was having rallies around Syria. I went to a couple of those rallies. So Webster Tarpley, who is a promoter of Russiagate conspiracies, who calls Trump a fascist, puts out all these crazy... Like, I met with him, so therefore I am responsible for what Tarpley believes. But then it gets even crazier. So Tarpley, as I mentioned, is an ex-member and a bitter enemy of the Lyndon LaRouche organization. So then they claim, and Caleb has also interviewed people from the Lyndon LaRouche organization, which, I mean, they do good stuff around China. They go around promoting the Belt and Road, which I think is a good thing. But they have their beliefs and I have mine. They reject Marxism. They advocate, this American school of economics. They support Donald Trump. I do none of those things. So, I'm a Marxist, right? So it's like, you listen to this shotgun that they shoot out there, Dagan, Tarpley, LaRouche. And it's like, first of all, I don't agree with all three of those people. I agree with, with a few of them on a few minor points. But overall, my views are not theirs. Plus, these people are nothing like each other. One of the main beliefs of the LaRouche people is they're obsessed with science and technology, right? And they believe in historical progress. So Dagan and LaRouche are like miles apart. LaRouche is all about America. He's all about the American system and science and technology, and he likes Donald Trump. Dagan is an orthodox traditionalist who believes that the past and the present and the future are the same, and that there's this great traditional way of doing things, and that historical progress is a dangerous illusion. So, like, Dagan and LaRouche are like 100 miles apart. The only thing they have in common is that I have spoken to them, right? So I'm looking for the big conspiracy theory. Plus, Webster Tarpley, who I briefly talked to in 2015, is the bitter enemy of both of them, right? He's preaching anti-Russian conspiracy theories about Trump. Plus, he hates the LaRouche people because they kicked him out, and there's a whole... So it's like, these are three people, none of whom I agree with. I am a Marxist, right? I was in the Workers' World Party for many years. I'm now, independent in my Marxist journalism and analysis. Three people who have nothing in common with each other. Three people that are like bitterly opposed to each other. But I spoke to all of them, so I'm supposed to be involved in a secret conspiracy with all of them. I mean, this is getting crazy. But then, it goes from there, right? So I attended the New Horizon Conference in Iran. Now, we're not even in Russia anymore, right? We're not talking about Russia now. Now we're talking about Iran. Okay, so I attended the New Horizon Conference in Iran, which is an anti-Israel conference that happens in Iran. So I went to the New Horizon Conference, right? As did Medea Benjamin, as did Gareth Porter, as did all kinds of people. Intellectuals from Europe, all kinds of people went to it, right? So, therefore, I'm responsible for what everyone at the New Horizon Conference said. Right? And keep in mind, there was all kinds of people there. There were black activists from Europe. There were the Nation of Islam. There's all kinds of conservative intellectuals. There's a writer from France named Terry Mason, who was really considered a founder of the 9/11 Truth movement. It's so wait a second. So now I'm in a conspiracy at this point. At this point, according to them, not only am I in a conspiracy with Dagan, but I'm in a conspiracy with LaRouche and with Webster Tarpley and with all these Iranian intellectuals. My God, I am at the center of a really big conspiracy theory with all kinds of people who don't agree with me and say opposite things to what I say. This is really, really bizarre. So we're really down the rabbit hole here, right? And these are all people that are pretty obscure. You ask average people on the street, who are any of these people? None of them have ever heard of them, right? So it's I went and met with this person. So therefore, I must agree with everything they've said. But then I met with this other person. And this other person that I met with, their views are completely opposite. But I still agree with all of what they say. Plus, I met with this other... this is crazy. Folks... Let me tell you something, all right? This may come as a surprise to you. It may come as a very, very big surprise to you. But I don't agree about everything with every person I have ever met with. Okay? I don't. It's amazing. But there are many times which around an issue that I feel strongly about, like not having World War III, like building peace with Russia and China, opposing Zionism, that I have sat down with people who I don't agree with about absolutely everything, right? And even if you take me out of the equation, these people, as I'm trying to explain, don't agree with each other about a lot of things. And it's it's bizarre, right? And so then, on top of the fact that, so the red-brown conspiracy theory, right? So it's every person I've ever met, I'm responsible for all of their views, number one. Number two, somehow, these people are all the equivalent of Adolf Hitler. Well, folks, I am not going to go through all of these individuals and defend them because they've all said and done things that I don't agree with. And so if I sit here and say everything, and defend all the allegations against them, that's not my place because I don't represent these people. But none of the people I have named are the equivalent of Adolf Hitler, okay? They all have their flaws. They all have their weaknesses. I don't agree with all of them. I'm a Marxist. But none of them are Nazis. I'm just telling you the truth, right? None of the three, Webster Tarpley, not a Nazi. Dagan, not a Nazi. LaRouche's, not a Nazi. Not Nazis, right? They all have very different views than me, but none of them are Nazis, right? Like, can we understand here that, like, these people, they have a wide variety of views, but none of them are Nazis. And then the argument is, well, yes, they are Nazis because they talk to and it's like, this is just really, 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 really a stretch of the mind. I mean, this is the equivalent of KeyWiki, of Discover the Networks, right? I mean, don't you know that Barack Obama is a communist? He's a communist because when he was living in Hawaii, he was a friend of Frank Marshall Davis, and years before he ever met Barack Obama, Frank Marshall Davis was in the Communist Party, so therefore Barack Obama is a communist. Didn't you know that? Come on, guys. Barack Obama's a communist. I mean, this is that level of, like, crazy, right? I mean, yeah. I mean, this is like some crazy stuff. But the conclusion that you are supposed to draw from it the super chat you asked was about having somebody on to talk about China and the situation there, and I saw it, and I will consider that. Is that the one, or was there another one? But, like, this is the logic here, right? So it's like so-and-so talked to so-and-so, 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 so therefore, this is just, thoughts on nuclear energy. I didn't see that. Okay, writing it down. Thoughts on nuclear energy. Definitely we'll talk about that. Definitely, didn't see it. Went right by. Okay, definitely. Good super chat, too. I'm definitely going to talk about that. So this is how, like, crazy this stuff is, right? I mean, it's like Bill Ayers, who used to be a communist, was a friend of, campaigned for Obama in Chicago and like lived in his apartment building or something. So therefore Obama is a communist. I mean, it's like, this is silly thinking. It's very, very silly thinking. It's very, very silly thinking. And it doesn't make any sense. I mean, it's just, it's like, it gets sillier and stupider by the day. And this is going around, and where is it coming from? We can only speculate, but it's interesting. It's very, very interesting. I mean, it's very, very interesting, right? And a lot of what it is, folks, the only reason I bring it up, and I told you I was hesitant to bring it up because I don't want to say this more than once, but because it's like, that's what these people want. They want me to spend all my time tap dancing and trying to refute crazy allegations, right? And it's like, it's how, I mean, they always talk about the classic example of this, right? Is that there's the small town, the newspapers aren't selling, and there's no news. It's a slow news day. So the mayor's having a press conference, right? So the local news in the small town shows up at the press conference, and they ask the mayor, are you still beating your wife? Are you still beating your wife? And the mayor says, beat my wife? I've never beaten my wife. What is that? So then the front page of the newspaper is, mayor denies beating his wife. You've got news, right? And that's how this thing works. It's like, okay, so it's like, and I've gotten so many people message me, Caleb, why don't you just refute these allegations? There's nothing to refute. That's part of the game, right? Right? So it's like, if you ask somebody, hey, did you stop beating your wife? And you reply, I never beat my wife, then the story becomes, denies beating his wife, and that becomes what it's about. And that's the game these people are playing. That's the game these people are playing, right? That is how these people play this game, right? Are you still beating your wife? And that's how they play this game. I swear most of these people have never heard of Alexander Dagan. They've never heard of Webster Tarpley. They've never heard of Lyndon LaRouche. Never heard of them. Right? But somebody told them, don't you know? And then also everyone feels like they've got inside information. They've got inside information when they hear about this. And basically the reason I'm bringing it all up to you, the reason that I'm bringing it up to you, all of you, is what they are trying to do is to inoculate people against our community. That's really what they're trying to do. They want to make sure that people who might consider listening to these conversations, joining our community, being part of what we're doing here, this really, really special thing that we're doing here, they want to inoculate them against it, right? Because if you listen to these broadcasts for more than 2 minutes, you know that we ain't Nazis. You know that we're not white supremacists. You know we're not, right? We're not. However, if they can prevent people from joining these conversations, then they've won. Because once people get on here, if they're at all honest intellectually, they know what we're about. And it's very clear what we're about. Now, I want to say that 2 days ago, something happened that made me so proud of our community. So proud of us. Just so proud of us. So proud of us. So, there was a young man somewhere in the country who was a member of a certain political group who was not only repeating these slanders against, me and by de facto you, but he was actually calling for violence. Right? And this young man who was on the internet calling for violence against me, I believe the quote was, "If you like Caleb Maupin, message me and I'll explain to you why you should kick his ass." Right? So this message was out there. Now, this wasn't just a random person on the internet. This person was the regional leader of a certain Marxist-Leninist political party in the United States. And he posted this, right? A call for violence, right? Basically, if you like Caleb, message me and I'll explain to you why you should commit violence against him. Now, I was in a Marxist-Leninist group for a long time. I'm not now. I'm politically independent. I'm building a think tank, but I'm not a member of an ML tendency. I'm just trying to promote ideas. I'm not an ML. I'm not a member of a cadre organization. I'm trying to build a think tank, but definitely not a member of a cadre group. He put this out on the internet. And I thought, don't communist groups have this thing called democratic centralism, where when you speak publicly, you are representing the whole organization? I mean, that's the fact, right? That is the fact. I mean, in democratic centralist Marxist-Leninist groups, if one member of your group, especially someone who's the leader of a regional branch of your organization, makes that statement, they are representing that organization. So I said, we need to get clarity from this Marxist-Leninist group. We need to get clarity from them. That they are not joining this hate campaign. Because what's outrageous about the whole thing is that this Marxist-Leninist group is also on all of those red-brown lists, right? All the same allegations that are made against me are made against the leaders of that group. They've shaken hands with the exact same people I have. Before I was even born, these people had met with Dagan in Yugoslavia, okay? And they had done, they'd gone to conferences in Yugoslavia where Dagan was, before I was born, okay? So, all of the smears and hate against me applies to this group and the leaders of this group just as much, and they're way older than I am, right? It applies to any anti-imperialist when you get down to it, but it applies to their leaders way more, right? They did stuff with Dagan and his associates in Yugoslavia. They did stuff with they've had rallies around Russia that LaRouche people have gone to. They've had rallies around Syria that Webster Tarpley has gone to. So it's like all the allegations against me are just as true against this group, right? And they're all bullshit. It's all this stupid guilt by association. But this member of this organization was putting this out on the internet. And so I called on this community, on Twitter, on Facebook, to call the office of this organization, and ask them why they are allowing this person, who is the regional director of their organization, to do this. And at least 20 people that I can gather made a phone call to the national headquarters of this organization. I think it was more than that. But around the country, we mobilized to defend this community. We said, you know what? Calling for violence crosses a line, right? The smears come every day. The smears come every day. But calling for physical violence crosses the line, number one. And number two, right, this isn't just coming from some random person, or we would just ignore it. This was coming from an organization. So we, as a community, we rallied against this. And within a couple hours, I didn't think it would work this fast. I thought it would at least be like the next day, next week, something might happen. Boom. 3 hours later, this person was apologizing. This person was repudiating their statement, gave a beautiful apology, and that's why I'm not repeating the name of the group, because it's water under the bridge, as far as I am concerned. Water under the bridge. We solved the problem. Within 3 hours of us swinging into action, we solved the problem. And I can guarantee you that that organization will not be repeating the red-brown smear against you and me anytime soon. I can guarantee you that. I don't want to get into specifics, but there's been some communication that has gone on, and I can guarantee you that this group, you know, we don't agree with each other, and that's fine. There are disagreements. They won't be engaging in this kind of activity, and their members will not be engaging in this kind of activity anymore. And that is good, right? And I hope that in the future, you know, CPI, the Center for Political Innovation, and this group can do things together. I hope that at some point we can have an educational conference about socialism together. I hope we can cooperate, right? I'm never going to join this group. I don't join political parties because of, you know, my job situation does not permit that, number one. But number two, I've been in groups before, and I think we need a think tank. But at the same time though, right? At the same time, I don't want there to be bad blood between me and this particular organization or any other ML group in the United States or any other anarchist or social democratic group. I would like there to be a conversation about socialism where people listen to each other and engage in productive conversation and dialogue. And we develop a form of socialism that will work in the United States, that will be victorious in the United States. We start moving the country towards socialism. That's what I want. That is what I want. And I feel like as a community, we took action and we moved ahead with that goal. We swung into action as a community, and we demanded some accountability around the threat this person made. And that organization, you know, we were forced to the negotiating table. A conversation was had, and it was a good conversation. And I'm very happy about this. I think this is a step forward. And, you know, it shows that when we come together as a community, we can get things done. We can get things done as a community. I mean, we have the ability to do a lot more than just be a fun, entertaining conversation to listen to on Friday evenings, right? We can get things done, right? There's a lot of people who watch these conversations, right? You know, I don't want to get into specifics here, but, you know, there's a certain number of people watching now. That's pretty obvious. But, you know, there are thousands of people that watch every one of these lives. Like, let's be real, right? I mean, there's certain metrics, right? The number down below is not exactly the correct number, but, you know, there's another metric that we're given as a YouTube community. And there are thousands of people who watch these conversations. And we got something done as a community. And we can get more things done as a community. We can get a lot more things done. We are strong, right? You know, there's a lot of analogies, right? In the union movement, there's an old union hymn that says, drops of water turn a mill. You ever hear that? Drops of water turn a mill, right? You know, they talk about fingers alone have no value, but together they form a fist, right? You ever hear that? Very good stuff. Very, very good stuff. We can get stuff done as a community, right? We can get stuff done. We have the power, right? I think that this conference tomorrow on the internet, linked below, the Center for Political Innovation conference that's happening tomorrow evening, you know, that's pretty good. But a lot of things are happening. So before we get into the roll call and then I start answering your questions, I did want to mention that this book, the second Center for Political Innovation book, my book on Kamala Harris, right? There have been some pretty good reviews of it lately. very, very good reviews. I was able to get on Low Society podcast over the weekend, and we talked about the book on Low Society podcast with Peter Coffin and Angie Speaks. Then my good friend Max Perry, who is a writer for the Greenville Post, he published a review of the book, that he wrote his review of it. A good friend of mine who runs the podcast called, the YouTube channel called Ewoks Unhinged. Ewoks Unhinged, he did a video review of the book that was pretty good. This book is getting a lot of good reviews, right? It's doing pretty well. People who've read this book, they tend to like what I have to say about Kamala Harris. We're doing good stuff here. It's very exciting. Now, what's interesting is, I don't know how this happened. This just blows my mind. So my friend Max Perry, who wrote the review of the book for Greenville Post, and we were on Twink Rev, we talked about it. Twink Rev is a great podcast, by the way. If you haven't had a chance, listen to Twink Revolution podcast. It's amazing. It's amazing. Don't you love how the painting just turned off? It just turned off, right? Art sometimes turns off if you don't plug it in. Did you know that? Anyway, but theory without practice is sterile. Practice without theory is futile. Absolutely, David. Absolutely. Theory and practice, right? And so anyway, so after that, sorry, what was I saying? Oh, so after my friend Max Perry wrote his review for Greenville Post, the strange, bizarre website called Unz Review. Do folks know Unz Review? Unz Review, that certainly publishes a lot of stuff I would not agree with. They reprinted Max Perry's review of the book. So this book is getting quite a bit of circulation. A lot of people are commenting and chiming in on this book. Hey, great. If you have read the book and you like it, please tweet about it. Please share it. Please consider making a video review, write a review for Amazon, write a review for Goodreads.com. Do what you can, because this book puts forward our thesis. Really, it's not just about Kamala Harris. This book is not just about Kamala Harris. It is about the synthetic left, and it is about the need for a real socialist populism to emerge in the United States. And I use Kamala Harris as a case study for what is wrong with leftism, what is the crisis facing the country, and how we can move ahead as a country. So if you want to make a video review, please go for it. If you want to write a review on Amazon, please go for it. Because I think that this book is already having an impact. I really do. I think people are blown away by this. People didn't see this coming. Go ahead and help us build this book, because it's happening. And if we can have an impact in one area, we can have an impact in another area, right? So join the conference that's coming up tomorrow. I'll be giving the keynote address, and I'm preparing to give a good presentation tomorrow. But I am so excited to see what some of these other activists are doing. Good friend of our work here, Dust James. Do people know Dust James? He's got a great YouTube channel called AntiImperialist America. He is going to be the chair of the meeting. He'll be chairing the meeting, giving some opening remarks, seeking progressive media blogs from, progressive media blogs from other countries. Alrighty. Dust James is going to be part of it. There'll be some other people that are on from different parts of the country, and it's going to be great. It's really just going to be really, really special. And the thing is, though, this is the first one we've ever done. We've never done a web conference like this before. So you learn by doing. This probably won't go as smoothly as the future ones that we will do, but fingers crossed it'll go as well as we can. There's some people, good friends. Justin is working really, really hard to make sure this happens. There's other people around the country working really, really hard. And there's a lot of people who are really dedicated to building an actual organization, an actual think tank centered around the ideas that we talk about on here, actually moving ahead with our agenda of cutting new ground and engaging in political innovation to break out of the crisis that we're in. And our community has strength, right? We, somebody threatened us and we came out swinging, and, we are moving right ahead. We are moving right along. We are moving right along. So, let's keep doing what we're doing. Let's keep moving ahead. I am proud of all of you. We together are strong, right? But what force on earth is weaker than the feeble strength of one, right? Together we are strong. We are moving ahead, and no one will stop us, right? We're moving ahead. So on that note, folks, names and locations. I will call you out as I see you. Who's with us tonight? Who's with us? Names and locations. Cherokee Nation, Texas. Wow. All right. Who's with us? Vallejo, California. Jason. Robert from Hawaii. Netherlands here. Sao Paulo, Brazil. England. West Virginia. Sam in Los Angeles. Jack Dundee, UK. Denver, Colorado. New Orleans, Louisiana. Ligma, Michigan. Croatia. Sami in the UK. Glasgow, Scotland. Charlie, Australia. Ligma, Nepal, Springfield, Missouri, Brooklyn, North Carolina, Mohsin from Iran, Little Falls, New Jersey, Brazil, he said it, South Carolina, Wales, Georgia, very good. Bendigo, Australia is with us, David Fox. Henderson, Nevada, Canada, Phoenixville, Pennsylvania, Ohio, occupied Ireland, FVK Memphis, New Jersey, not real, Plymouth, Red Dragon, USA, somewhere in the USA, St. Louis, Missouri, Detroit, New Zealand, says Noel, New Zealand, OP Treasure Coast, Florida, Norway, it's either going to be my way or Norway. So you can have Norway. Sigma, Sugar Bowl, Elwood City, Joshua Tree, California. Kinky is with us. Max the saxophonist from Virginia. Shout out to you, Max. You'll be playing the saxophone on our broadcast tomorrow, by the way, on our meeting. Houston, Texas. Dan from Moran. Makato, Minnesota. Very good. Very, very good. Leipzig, East Germany. Ethan, Melbourne, Australia. Queens, New York, Lloyd Bennett with us. Very good. Reno, Nevada. Very good. Oakland, home of the Black Panthers. Harold in Florida. It's Balthazar is out there in Oakland. Caracas, Venezuela. Jose Gonzalez. Very good. Turlock, California. Hawaii. I'm good. Hawaii. I'm good. Oh, it's an old joke. I'm sure if you're from there, you've heard that a million times, so I'll refrain from telling that. But yeah, Mexico is with us. Someone said Area 51. Well, UFO, Northern California. All right. Oahu, Hawaii. Very good. Very good. Anybody else? State your name and location now if you want to shout out, because Dublin, Ireland, Kim Ford. Very, very good. Very, very good. Very, very good. Corona, California. Houston, Texas. All right. Sage, Milwaukee. Joe Biden's basement. Arthur, Saxony. Jersey City, New Jersey. Very good. Glad you're out there in Jersey City, New Jersey. Palo Round Mountain, California. Hit the like button. That's a great city. Hit the like button. Great city. Belgrade, Serbia. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Bayonne, New Jersey. Right? Alrighty. Anybody else? New Brunswick, New Jersey. I think it's New Brunswick, not Gunswick. Truth and Consequences, New Mexico. Is that the name of a city? Truth and Consequences. Alrighty. Lackawanna, Nebraska. Very good. Austin, Texas. Caleb, do you ever get drunk? No, I don't. I've told the story of the fact that alcohol and my system just don't go together. So no, I don't get drunk. But people think I'm drunk a lot because I talk very excitedly and I have a red face a lot. So people think I'm drunk on here, but I'm not drunk. I'm just being a red-faced guy. And I'm talking. Alrighty, folks. Well, glad you're here. How am I supposed to be inspired and optimistic because of socialism? Your words are starting to, whoa. Repeat the super chat, please. Repeat the super chat. Went by way too fast. I didn't see the last bit of it. Someone repeat that super chat, please. Repeat that super chat, please. All right. Starting to feel redundant. Wow, okay. Okay, inspired, optimistic, redundant. Alrighty. So now I will start answering the super chats the same way I always do. I will answer them in order that they were asked. So first of all, someone asked me about Howie Hawkins and Leonard Peltier. Well, hey, the fact that Howie Hawkins gave a shout out to Leonard Peltier is a good thing. The person is upset they didn't mention the fact that he was at one point running for vice president. Howie Hawkins, I can't speak for him. I don't know why he did that. I saw that Jimmy Dore was interviewing him. Howie Hawkins, the Green Party has been facing a pretty big onslaught. They've been trying to drive them off the ballot in a number of states. The Democrats have been pretty vicious. Would you invite Bay Area? What is that? What is that? What is that? Can someone explain what Bay Area 415 is? What is that? He's a YouTuber. Okay, well, I'll have to check him out. I'll have to Google him. I'm actually writing his name down right here. Because I've never heard of him, but I'll have to watch it. I'll have to figure out who he is. Okay, cool. Leonard Peltier, the fact that he mentioned him, I think is a good thing. Folks, I think Leonard Peltier is innocent. I do not think he killed those FBI agents. I think it's pretty obvious to a number of people who did the ballistics investigations. That the Leonard Peltier was not the one who killed those FBI agents. It was friendly fire. The American Indian Movement activists were being shot at from multiple sides, and the FBI agents killed each other. It was friendly fire. And the other American Indian Movement activists who were tried for that incident, they were acquitted in court, but because Leonard Peltier fled to Canada, Leonard Peltier was tried separately, and they were able to convict him. They were able to learn from the way the defense operated at the first trial, and so based on that, they were able to convict Leonard Peltier. I think he's innocent. I don't think he did what he did. And I think the only reason he's still in prison is because the FBI has a vendetta, right? I mean, Bill Clinton was going to free Leonard Peltier and then backed off as soon as thousands of FBI agents assembled outside the White House and scared the crap out of him. Obama freed everyone you ever heard of. Chelsea Manning, he freed Chelsea Manning, he freed Oscar Rivera Lopez, but didn't touch Leonard Peltier. And it's pretty clear the FBI has a vendetta, and because of that, Leonard Peltier is still in prison, even though the evidence pretty clearly indicates he didn't do what he was charged with. The FBI is very angry at the American Indian Movement, not the American Indian Movement. I mean, they're angry at the ones that led the uprising. And so Leonard Peltier remains in prison, and that's deeply unfortunate. So there you go. Leonard Peltier's, I will say, folks, before we move on from this topic, let me mention that at one point I did, I had the honor, really, of speaking at a political prisoners benefit. It was in New York City, and it was actually at the ballroom where Malcolm X was killed, at the Betty Shabazz Center. It was at the site of the murder of Malcolm X. There was a political prisoners benefit fundraiser. I've been to a lot of political events before. This was different, and I was invited to speak. And if you looked at the flyer, I was the only white speaker at the event, that was pretty big as well. I'm kind of honored. I actually, I'm kind of proud. I have the flyer as the only one, and they have the face of every speaker, and I'm the only white guy on it. And I was pretty honored to be the only white speaker at this event. And I went to this political prisoners benefit at the Betty Shabazz Center. This was 5-6 years ago. And, this was a political prisoners benefit. It was supporting Mumia Abu-Jamal. It was supporting the Move 9. It was supporting Jamil Al-Amin. It was supporting a number of former Black Liberation Army people. It was supporting a number of people that are in federal and state prisons that were part of the Black Liberation movement. And there were former political prisoners who were at the event, people that have done time for their involvement in Black liberation and, left-wing anti-imperialist work. I've been to a lot of left-wing events, but this was a little bit different. It was in Harlem, and it was a room full of older African-American folks. And you looked out on that room, and you saw a lot of damage. What went on in the 1960s and 70s, it didn't get to the point of the Civil War, but, it was pretty darn close. A lot of people got killed. Fred Hampton, Mark Clark, right? Bobby Hutton. A lot of people got killed. A lot of people, their lives were destroyed. And a lot of people lived through it, never went to prison, but have horrendous PTSD, were tortured, saw family members killed, feared for their lives. You don't have to endorse every tactic. I do not advocate left adventurism. I do not advocate armed struggle in the United States. I really, really don't, okay? I really don't advocate that. I've always said that Marxists oppose left adventurism, but in the context of the 1960s, in the context of everything that was going on, in the context of things that were happening at that time, a lot of people made a lot of decisions, right? And they need to let these people out of jail, right? It was like Northern Ireland. It was like South Africa. And if you're, they need to let these people out of jail, right? Because we know the U.S. government killed far, far more people than any leftist or activist ever killed. And, there needs to be a prisoner exchange, right? They need to just, that period, if they're really at the point where they're going to allow people to organize peacefully and all of that, they need to let these people out of jail. Free all political prisoners. They should all be released, all of them, right? And an understanding that, that was a period of great turmoil in which a lot of people were killed in the African-American community, and there was a lot of violence from a lot of different forces. There needs to be a blanket amnesty for all political prisoners of the Black liberation struggle and of the 1960s and 70s upsurge, right? They should all be released, in my opinion, right? There needs to be an amnesty, right? We need to recognize that that was a moment of great unrest in this country, and a lot of people were hurt, and a lot of evil things were being done by the American government. But a lot of leftists also took actions that I would not endorse, but amnesty. There needs to be an amnesty for all of the people that are still locked up. Absolutely needs to be an amnesty. Jamil Al-Amin, let him out of jail, right? David Gilbert, let him out of jail, right? Who else? Mumia Abu-Jamal, let him out of jail, right? The Move 9, let him out of jail. The political prisoners of the Black liberation struggle, of the anti-imperialist groups. There's some Puerto Rican prisoners, I believe. Obama did free Oscar Rivera Lopez. But, there needs to be, if that chapter of American history, which was very ugly, is truly over, part of truth and reconciliation needs to be releasing the political prisoners, right? The thing is, I was in that room with, the family members, with people that had been active in the Black liberation struggle. I hugged Ramona Africa and Pam Africa. You can watch my talk. I gave a talk at this political prisoners benefit. I have a feeling that there are probably events in Northern Ireland, that are like that event that I went to, that are full of people from that same age range, with that same level of PTSD, if not worse. There are events like that in South Africa. There are events like this all over the world where people are engaged in a national liberation struggle, right? And that, and this is, I was in a room full of veterans, war veterans, really. That's what I was in the room full of. I was in a room full of war veterans. It was not a declared war, it was not a full-on war, but there was a black liberation movement in the United States, and there was a war against the black liberation movement, I was in a room full of war veterans. And, obviously, I don't endorse left adventurism. I believe in peaceful, democratic transition towards socialism, but I wasn't living in their time, all right? I didn't grow up under Jim Crow segregation. I didn't, right? I didn't ever face being drafted to fight in the Vietnam War. So I don't know what I would have done in that situation, and none of us really know what we would have done in that situation. None of us know, right? We do know what we would do now, and now we have the ability to struggle peacefully. And now there is a broad group of, the struggle is one that can be waged in a peaceful and democratic way. And, what went on in those times, I feel like in those times, you could have also waged it in a peaceful and democratic way, but I was not alive in those times. And I can't guarantee you that I would feel the same way if I had lived in those times. So, there needs, Leonard Peltier, right? They need to let him out, right? There needs to be a blanket amnesty for all political prisoners, period, right? All political prisoners of the 1960s and 70s upsurge, of the Black Liberation Movement, the Move 9, Mumia, they need to be out. They need to let them go, right? When I was in high school, I actually saw a movie called Through the Wire. Have people ever seen Through the Wire? Through the Wire. It was a movie that came out, and it was about some of these activists. One of them was a Puerto Rican liberation activist. Another was a leader of something called the May 19th Communist Organization, Susan Rosenberg, and I don't remember who the other woman was. It was three women that were political prisoners. These women that were political prisoners, not only were they in federal prison, but they set up like a special torture facility for them in the basement of a federal women's prison. Susan Sarandon narrates this documentary. And if you want to see something disturbing about what the U.S. government does, check out the movie Through the Wire. Because these three women, right, and they were doing time for political stuff, but they set up, Trilateral Commission. They set up this like facility in the basement of the prison where they were kept in like solitary confinement. You watch what was done to them. It was really horrendous stuff. Check out the movie Through the Wire. You'll see what I'm talking about, right? So there you go. I've probably spent a little bit too much time talking on that. My position is free all political prisoners. I've spoken at political prisoner benefits. There you go. All righty. Okay. Right. The managerial bourgeoisie. What if they refuse social democratic policies? Well, here's the thing. I don't think they're going to implement social democratic policies, right? I think they will implement managerial policies, right? The managerial bourgeoisie, they favor a gradual transition to a lower standard of living, a controlled demolition of the U.S. Revolution. Okay, good for you. They favor a gradual reduction of consumption. That's how they put it, a reduction of consumption across the United States. That's what they favor. Gradually reducing the levels of consumption all throughout the country, gradually transitioning to a lower standard of living. But they want to do it in a very controlled and careful way, right? They want everyone in the United States to live a materially poorer life, They want to reduce the human population. I didn't miss the super chat, but it doesn't deserve an answer. The Trilateral Commission deserves an answer, and you'll get one on that. The other one was just being silly, and I don't answer silliness. But they want to gradually transition, right? And they're thinking long term. How do we gradually transition to a lower standard of living in the United States? How do we gradually reduce the population and the human population overall? They're thinking about it in a controlled kind of way. That's not social democracy, right? Social democracy is the idea we can build socialism one step at a time. That's the difference, right? Social democracy is the idea that we can build socialism one step at a time, right? And what the managerial bourgeoisie wants to do is not social democracy. However, they want the state to be more involved in gradually transitioning lower living standards. The rest of the bourgeoisie doesn't give a flying hoot, right? They don't care. They just want to make profits, right? Donald Trump, he wrote a book at one point that said corporations want every American to be rich so they can afford to buy their products. Well, Donald Trump may well believe that, right? If you're a guy who sells products, you'd say, yeah, I want everyone to be rich so they can buy all my products. Well, that sounds great. That's not strategic if you're thinking in the long-term interests of the capitalist class. But if you're just a guy who's selling products, yeah, I want everyone to be rich so they can all buy my products. Well, if they're all rich, they might all start companies and start selling their own products and compete with you. I don't think you want everyone to be rich. I just think you want a monopoly, right? But that's Donald Trump. He wrote this in his book. He wants everyone to be rich. That's kind of how the lower levels of capital think. The fracking companies, Hobby Lobby, Home Depot, what's his name, Bernie Marcus, they don't care. They're not thinking long-term. They don't have a long-term strategy, okay? That's the difference. Social democracy is something else. Social democracy is a form of Marxism that waters down Marxism to be a struggle for reform. That does not believe that there is a difference really between capitalism and socialism, that capitalism just kind of naturally turns into socialism. That's social democracy. But yeah, there is we can call the Eastern establishment. There is the think tanks and the ultra rich have set up kind of an apparatus for strategically planning how to have social peace so they can stay on top. And that involves Malthusianism and the struggle to reduce the human population. That involves the gradual approach to reducing human consumption. That's what the Eastern establishment wants. And they may feel that something like a universal basic income is necessary in order to have social peace. They want social peace. That's what they want. They want social peace. That's what they want. They do not want any instability. Because the only way they can lose their position is with there's instability. As long as society remains stable, they're going to stay at the top of the pyramid. They know that. But if there's a big shakeup, like there's a populist leader, or there's a revolutionary movement, or then their position is threatened. But as long as society is more or less stable, they stay at the top. So their strategy is how do we stay at the top and continue to maximize our position? That's all. Okay. FDR. Other than FDR, which president do I like? Lincoln. Lincoln and FDR were our two greatest presidents, and they were the two presidents who worked closely with communists. And what's interesting is, Marxists have always said FDR and Lincoln were the great presidents. Lincoln personally praised Marx. FDR was very much aligned with the Communist Party. But you know what? Public opinion in the United States matches the communist position. Communists like Lincoln, communists like Roosevelt. Americans say our two greatest presidents were Lincoln and Roosevelt, according to every poll. So American public opinion and communism line up exactly, right? We are in the mainstream when it comes to that. Communists are in the mainstream. Think about it. We are in the mainstream, right? We are in the mainstream, right? FDR and Lincoln are our two greatest presidents. We support Abraham Lincoln because he led a progressive struggle to abolish slavery. We support Franklin Roosevelt because he enacted all kinds of progressive reforms and defeated fascism in a popular front. And we are in the mainstream, right? FDR and Lincoln are the greatest presidents in American history, according to most Americans. So that's a good thing. I think it's a very, very good thing. Neither FDR or Lincoln were Marxists or socialists. Now, some people argue that FDR may have been in his final years of his life starting to move towards socialism. He advocated an economic Bill of Rights, and he wanted to maintain the U.S.-Soviet alliance after World War II. And it's very likely Roosevelt had enough power as a Bonapartist that he could have started to do things that were against the interests of the ruling class as a whole. And who knows what could have happened if Roosevelt had not died. That said, though, Roosevelt, for most of his career, he said his goal was to save capitalism. But he had no problem entering an alliance with progressives and communists, etc. So yeah, I think Roosevelt was a progressive figure, he got good stuff done in a lot of ways. So there you go. Okay, what was the economy of Germany like under Hitler? Well, okay, I've talked about this many times. The economist of the Nazi state, thoughts on Nostradamus? I don't know enough about Nostradamus, but Antichrist predictions. I can talk about the Antichrist. I can talk about that. That's a theological point, which I think is interesting. But Nostradamus I know nothing about. Anyhow, enough about that. The Hitler's economy. Well, Hitler's economist was Hjalmar Schacht. And Hjalmar Schacht was a banker. He was a Nazi. He was a German banker, but he was the one who really got Hitler into power. He went around to the rest of the German ruling class and said, "This is our guy. He's going to defeat the communists," and convinced the rest of the German German ruling class to support Hitler. And when Hitler came to power, he took power. First of all, Jordan Peterson is a big fat liar. Jordan Peterson, in one of his videos, he claims Hitler got a super majority. No politician had ever gotten so much of a majority as Hitler did. Bull honky. Bull honky. Hitler never got a majority, right? Hitler got a plurality, right? But he never got a majority. He was appointed chancellor. Never did the majority of Germans vote for Hitler in a real election. That is bull honky. Hitler did not get a majority. He had a minority. The only reason the Nazi Party got full rule is because the communists were barred from the elections. And that's a whole nother story. But anyhow, so Hitler took power, please do the Jordan Peterson voice. Oh, okay, so Hitler took power, you see, and he wasn't quite a friendly guy, but Hitler took power, and he, in terms of economic moves, he built these roads called the Autobahns, right? These are highways, right, that would connect one end of Germany to another. And they're still around. They're just these highways. So he built the Autobahns. But before he did that, he rounded up all the leaders of the Communist Party and all the leaders of the Social Democratic Party and put them in prison camps. So keep in mind, these people were all the leaders, not just of the political parties, the Communist Party and the Social Democratic Party. They were also leaders of the labor unions. So they were all put in prison camps. So there was no labor movement, right? No strikes, no labor movement. And these camps that they built cost lots of money to build, right? And thousands and thousands of people in Germany got jobs building the camps, and thousands of people got jobs working in the camps, plus thousands and thousands of people were put into the camps. So all those people that were building the camps, working in the camps, or in the camps, were not unemployed anymore. You're in prison, you're not unemployed. If you were building a concentration camp and getting paid to do it, you're not unemployed. If you're a prison guard, you're not unemployed, right? So unemployment in Germany was drastically decreased by putting all kinds of people in prison camps. Then he hired a bunch of people, used government money to build the Autobahns, these highways. Then he restarted military manufacturing and armaments, rearmed the country, right? So all kinds of people got jobs in military plants, right? And he actually Hjalmar Schacht set up a special corporation for military spending and military investment. And then the final thing was Germany did not pay back its loans to American and British banks. The story is he actually sent Hitler sent Hjalmar Schacht to meet with Roosevelt, and Hjalmar Schacht said to Roosevelt that Germany will not be paying back its loans to American banks, and Roosevelt laughed, and he said, "It serves those Wall Street guys right." He thought it was funny, but Germany didn't pay back its loans. So all of those things, Germany had like the worst economy in Europe prior to that. There was mass unemployment, mass starvation. Well, if you restart military spending, you build a bunch of highways, you build a big network of concentration camps, and you put a whole bunch of people in those concentration camps, and then you use those people in the concentration camps to do free labor for companies, right? Which they did, right? They made cars for Volkswagen. They did all kinds of stuff, for private German companies. You basically rent out the prisoners to different companies. You can reboot the economy. And for, 4 or 5 years, Germany suddenly had a big economic boom. Bonapartism, right? That's what fascism is. It's a form of Bonapartism. One section of the ruling class of Germany, the industrial capitalists of Germany, centered around Hallemer Schacht, their banker, took control of the government. And they used the government to jumpstart the economy, right? And in order to do that, they had to violently suppress the rest of the ruling class, namely the American and British, bankers, namely, other factions in the ruling class that were anti-fascist, namely German capitalists that were doing business with American and British companies. They had to violently suppress, the majority of the class so that this faction, Krupp, Tyson, Schacht, so that they could jumpstart the economy with very dramatic moves. Jack Rasmus. That's basically how the Nazi state operated. They built a prison industrial complex and a military industrial complex. The concentration camps were their prison industrial complex, and the military spending corporation was the military industrial complex. And that I have long argued that since the end of the Second World War, the United States has adopted Nazi economics, right? We have tried to stimulate capitalism with military spending and with prison spending. Nazi economics. And I wrote an article about this. We have fascist economics in the United States. Now, it's different. We didn't do it all at once, right? The military industrial complex started after the Second World War, and it was very gradual, right? It escalated. It's continued. Now it's huge, but it started in the 40s, up into the 50s, it was escalating. It gradually escalated, right? The prison industrial complex really got going in the late 70s. But we use Nazi economics to prop up the U.S. economy, right? The free market in the United States would have collapsed a long time ago. So we've used Schachtian Nazi methods, right? People say the United States is military Keynesianism. Well, Keynesianism just means the government spends money. John Maynard Keynes, the economist, his theory was the government just needs to spend money to stop underconsumption. Hallemer Schacht argued that the government should spend money not on what he called ditch digging. He didn't believe in public works projects, didn't believe in government funding art, didn't believe in government funding science. He believed in the government spending money on the military and on prisons, right? Schachtian economics. And Schachtian economics, basically, in addition to using the government to spend money on means of destruction like prisons and the military, it also involves deeply impoverishing a section of the workforce, namely, the section of German society that were put in concentration camps, right? So Schachtian economics is using government spending as a stimulus, driving living standards down in the country for certain sections of the population to stabilize society overall. It's reactionary, right? Roosevelt, his version of Keynesian economics was he spent money on highways and bridges and science and universities and power plants and all kinds of great stuff. Nazis, no. Nazis were not all about that. They were about prisons and military spending. That's what they were about. And after World War II, basically the United States started gradually more and more implementing Nazi economics. And I've maintained that before. I've written articles about this. It's a very, very important point. Gambling under socialism. Okay, I'll write that down. Alrighty. Okay, thoughts on nuclear energy. I am for nuclear energy. Now, I think that nuclear energy should be under workers' control, under public control. I am not in favor of private nuclear energy because I don't trust private corporations, and that private corporations often will mismanage the nuclear system, and that's dangerous, just like anything else, right? I mean, fossil fuels is, Catalonia, writing it down. Fossil fuels, same story, right? I mean, I'm not against fossil fuels. I mean, I think we need to move on from them, but they were good for a while. I mean, but obviously it's mismanaged, So, at the end of the day, yeah, we need to get off of fossil fuels. We need to transition away from that. Nuclear is a higher form of energy. It's gotten safer over the years. But at the same time, I don't trust private capitalists to run it. I'm for a worker-controlled, centrally planned nuclear power. And we need fusion energy, right? Nuclear power is good. I'm for nuclear power. But, the movement against nuclear power, it was funded by big oil companies. It used to be environmentalists were the biggest supporters of nuclear power. Bet you didn't know that. But until the 70s, it was actually environmentalists that were supporters of nuclear power because they knew how bad fossil fuels was. And then big oil started writing checks to environmental groups, and suddenly they turned against nuclear power. And in fact, there was a very good debate. I don't generally like a lot of the stuff that Jacobin does, but they had a very good debate about nuclear power, which they laid out a lot of the fallacies, right? Nuclear power is not the dangerous, evil thing it is. It just isn't, right? I'm in favor of nuclear power. I don't know who that is. I am happy to interview anybody, but I don't know who that individual you mentioned is. I'm in favor of nuclear power. The movement against nuclear power was ultimately, it was synthetic leftism. It was anti-science, anti-progress, not a good thing. And the fact that the left got swept up into that, I get into that a lot in my upcoming book on the synthetic left. I talk at great length about the anti-nuclear movement. And it's funny because like the Communist Party, USA, they were in favor of nuclear power. And when the anti-nuclear movement got going, they started to realize, oh, yeah, this is not scientific. This is anti-communist. But then they kind of panicked, and by the mid-'80s, they joined the anti-nuclear movement. The Workers' World Party, very interesting. They joined the anti-nuclear movement, but Sam Marcy, the founder of the Workers' World Party, would always insist they not say they're against nuclear power, but they're for workers' control of nuclear power. The current leadership of the Workers' World Party has tried to obscure that. But Sam Marcy, he took the position, and that yes, the anti-nuclear movement ultimately became a movement against the military-industrial complex. It became a movement against the Pentagon because nuclear weapons and nuclear power in the United States are very closely aligned. It tends to be military corporations that set up nuclear power plants. And that, the anti-nuclear movement in the United States was a mobilization by big oil and the Eastern establishment to try and fight against the threat to big oil's power, which is nuclear fusion and nuclear energy. And that's obviously the case. So, big oil doesn't like nuclear power, and there's a reason that the United States goes around the world trying to prevent countries from getting nuclear power. There you go. I mean, I'm in favor of nuclear energy, right? But it needs to be under worker control. I don't trust private corporations, and I think we need to get fusion. We need fusion energy research. Putin and Xi have both called for international cooperation around nuclear energy, and I think that's a great thing. If we could have an international scientific effort where scientists in the USA and China and Russia and all over the world were all working together to get nuclear fusion, we could have it. We need nuclear fusion. Okay. All right. Progressive media blogs from other countries. What advice do I have? Well, I don't know. I mean, I would recommend if you're starting a blog, get a .com. Don't do Blogspot. I would get a .com. And try to get a diverse group of writers. I would want you to promote your blog on social media. That would be pretty necessary. Get some good graphics to design, to go with your blog, like your brand. Make it more than just text, obviously. There are different ways of going about it. Maybe set up a YouTube channel to go along with your blog. Maybe set up and do different things. Do video, do sound, interview different people, republish articles that you like, commission different things that you write. There's many different ways of doing a blog, but it's an art. I mean, it's ultimately art. There's no science to it, right? It's an art of getting people to like what you do. Alrighty. They're saying, why should I be inspired and optimistic? You find it redundant. Well, I mean, I think personally that if you stop being optimistic, you've entered a very dangerous place. And that on some level, it is your responsibility to yourself and to society to be optimistic. I've learned that. Now, I mean, I did not feel optimistic for many parts of my life, but I've learned that I am happier and the people around me are happier when I am optimistic. right? And that optimism makes you want to wake up in the morning. Optimism, it gives you a reason to keep going in the world. And that I believe that optimism is super, super important. And pessimism is the ultimate force of destruction. I am an optimist. Now, I think that the reason that some people are put off by optimism is because there's a lot of stupid optimism out there. For example, I had a grandfather who was a big fan of Norman Vincent Peale. Has anyone ever heard of Norman Vincent Peale? Norman Vincent Peale he was like one of the first self-help people. He was big in the 50s and 60s. The power of positive thinking. And, he coined the phrase, is the glass half empty or half full? That's Norman Vincent Peale. And, Donald Trump apparently went to the church in Manhattan where Norman Vincent Peale was the minister. And Norman Vincent Peale is an optimist, right? He went around telling people to be optimistic. And Norman Vincent Peale is also an idiot. I'm sorry, but it's like you listen to him. I'm watching a lecture by Norman Vincent Peale, and he's sitting there. I was in Taiwan the other day, and I was walking down the street, and I saw a tattoo parlor. And at the tattoo parlor in Taiwan, they had different things you could put tattooed on your arm. And one of the things that they had said, "Born to lose." Who would tattoo "Born to lose" on their arm? They wouldn't be popular. That's a dumb phrase. Don't put "born to lose" on your arm. If I was going to get a tattoo, it would say "born to win." Born to win. It's the dumbest shit you've ever heard. I'm sorry. Norman Vincent Peale, you listen to him, and it's like, I don't know. It's hokey, right? And that among like the lower levels of American capital, like the Donald Trump level, down to like your local salesman, there is this dumb optimism, right? There is this dumb kind of like, you can do anything if you just put your mind to it. By golly, I am going to be optimistic. And it goes along with this stupid free market thinking, right? It's like, anyone can be rich if they just think money, 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 money. And, there's The Secret, right? Oprah, it's basically the same shit, right? Oprah did The Secret, right? And it's like, it's this book about how if you just sit there and go, money, 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 money will appear, right? I mean, it just magic, right? And that there's a lot of dumb, stupid optimism in America, right? And that if you're somebody who has been suffering in your life, right? If you suffered, you get really sick of that dumb, stupid optimism really quick, all right? I mean, if you're having trouble paying your bills and you meet one of these people who's like, well, you just got to sit there and go, money, 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 and it's going to come to you, you're going to be like, you get pissed off with this stupid optimism, right? You don't want to be a stupid optimist, right? You don't want to be an idealist, right? You don't want to be Norman Vincent Peale. You don't want to be The Secret. Joel Osteen, there's a stupid optimist if there ever was one, right? Joel Osteen. So if that kind of annoying, stupid optimism has kind of infected you, that kind of, I don't know what you want to call it, swamp speculator, low-level capitalist, optimistic, salesman-y, what I understand your frustration with that. There's a lot of dumb stuff like that in the United States, but real optimism is scientific, right? Real optimism is based in dialectical and historical materialism. And it's based on the understanding that contradictions play out, that first there's a thesis, then there's an antithesis, then they clash, and the result is called a synthesis. And change comes through struggle, and that we all have a progressive role to play, and that history is always advancing, and that A does not equal A, right? That is a real scientific optimism, right? That is a real scientific optimism, that history is constantly advancing and moving ahead, right? I mean, there is a dialectical materialist, progressive, historical optimism. It's different than the stupid optimism that you get. So, if you don't want to be optimistic, you don't have to be, by the way. You're not required to be optimistic. If you want to be a pessimist, by all means, feel hopeless, be sad. But I am motivated to keep living my life and doing the work that I do by a profound sense of optimism that I get from the optimistic ideology called socialism. Socialism for me is optimism. It is optimism. There is nothing more optimistic than socialism, and socialism is the reason that I have optimism in my life. So I'm an optimist, and socialism is deeply, heavily tied in with my optimism. So there you go. Yeah, all right. Okie dokie. Trilateral Commission. The Trilateral Commission was established in the 1970s with Rockefeller money, and it was basically a think tank that was set up to figure out how do we deal with the political fallout of the 1960s? How do we get U.S. society in order? And how do we transition to a post-industrial society as the United States? How do we gradually lower living standards? How do we make sure there's not a lot of unrest? Noam Chomsky wrote about the Trilateral Commission. He was deeply disturbed by how anti-democratic it was. It basically opposed the idea of democracy. Zbigniew Brzezinski and Henry Kissinger came out of the Trilateral Commission, but basically everybody in the Carter administration came out of the Trilateral Commission. It was a Rockefeller think tank that was set up, and it tended to lean liberal. A lot of environmental documents came out of the Trilateral Commission. I don't know what the Powell Memo is, so I can't talk about that. All right. Someone asked about the Antichrist. The Antichrist, in the book of Revelations, there is a figure, in the Christian Bible, the final book is called the book of Revelations. And it is... the book of, first of all, like the Christian Bible, the way it was compiled was that for like the first 100 years of Christianity, there was no written anything, right? It was just an oral tradition. After that, when they started having church buildings in different places, every church had a book. It was just a book that they kept that was like a compilation of Christian stories and all of that. So then eventually you had the Council of Nicaea, which was a gathering where they took a vote and they established an official Bible for the Christian religion. And the book that they picked was the one that some rich guy had a scribe write out, because there was no printing press back then. So he had a scribe write out, and everyone got one that was written out by a scribe. So the richest guy paid his scribe, and that's the one we got. So the official Christian Bible that was selected at the Council of Nicaea, the final book of it is called the Book of Revelations. And the Book of Revelations, it is not exactly clear what it's supposed to be. Now, the Book of Revelations, it was basically, it's supposed to be a vision or a revelation that was had by an individual by the name of John on the Isle of Patmos. And it's a Greek island called the Isle of Patmos. And he was on the Isle of Patmos, and he had this vision. And it is a lot of gobbledygook, and there's 7 kings and 7 trumpets and 4 horsemen, and it's almost like gibberish, right? There's dragons, there's the whore of Babylon. What is it? Okay, what is it? We don't know what it is. Now there are differing interpretations. The sad thing is, most Christians at this point think it's about the end of the world. That interpretation of it didn't arise until the 1800s, right? Not until the 1800s did anyone say it was about the end of the world. The Roman Catholic Church maintained it was about the fall of the Roman Empire and the rise of the Catholic Church, and that they argued that it predicted the fall of Rome and predicted their ascendancy. Many people have also argued that it probably was not that it probably was a kind of a propaganda screed against the Roman Empire. It was kind of a coded propaganda screed against the Roman Empire. And there is a figure in the book of Revelations. I don't think he's actually called the Antichrist. I think he's called like the king of the world. He's this all-powerful king who rules the entire world. And he's this bad figure. And he rules the global economy. And he rules the entire world, and it's like he controls trade. Basically, it makes the case that there's this individual who emerges, who's the king of the entire world and controls trade, and he has sex with a famous prostitute, who is called the Whore of Babylon, and then the Whore of Babylon gets killed in horrendous ways and gets tortured to death. People often read the stuff about the Whore of Babylon. Basically the Whore of Babylon is really a misogynist thing, but many people saw the Whore of Babylon as being directed at other Christians, and it was Christians were accusing one sect of Christians as being sellouts, right? That there was one group of Christians that were anti-Roman. There's another group of Christians that were kissing Roman ass, and so those were Christians were the whores of Babylon, and that they get killed even worse than the non-Christians do or something, because they're sellouts, right? And that the whore of Babylon is like supposed to be the traitors, right? And the Christian church, and it's against the Antichrist, and the Antichrist is the king of the whole world, and he's brought down, and 7 trumpets, and 7 angels, and 4 horsemen, and what does it mean? Well, I mean, when I was a kid, I grew up in an area, there were a lot of evangelicals. There was this really, really dumb movie that was based on a bunch of really, really dumb books called Left Behind, and it was like we're living in the end times now, and it's about Israel and all of that. During the 1980s, there was a book that was very popular that alleged the Soviet Union was the Antichrist, right? And the Soviet communism was going to take over the entire world, and they were the Antichrist. And it is what it is, right? It's the book of Revelations. And it's a part of Christian theology that evangelicals talk a lot about, because their theology is like the end of the world is coming, battle of Armageddon, they're on the side of Christians. If you're not with them, you're satanic. That's what Amy Coney Barrett probably thinks. That's what Mike Pence believes. That's what Mike Pompeo believes. Mike Pompeo actually makes references to Armageddon in some of his speeches. More moderate Christians tend to not talk about it. They tend to just not discuss it, right? Or just say it, they just don't reference it. The Catholic Church believes it predicted their ascendancy in the fall of the Roman Empire. That's, I believe, the Catholic position. And yeah, so you asked me what the Antichrist was, and I mean, I'm just telling you, I mean, it's a figure who is referenced in the book of Revelations of the Christian Bible. Now, you asked me about this figure Nostradamus. I know nothing about Nostradamus. I just know nothing about it, so I can't really comment on that. I think wasn't he some poet or mystic or something who lived in the Middle Ages and made some like spooky poems or something? How will he control trade? I don't know. I'm not talking about him. There is no him. I'm telling you that this is Christian theology. So yeah, please, if you ask a pastor about this, ask a theologian about this. I'm not telling you there will be an Antichrist. I'm telling you that so don't ask me stuff like that, because I'm not a theologian, and I'm not here to save your soul. I believe that religion is a personal matter, mind you. And please, if you're somebody who's listening to this and you really do believe that the book of Revelation is about the end times, please don't take offense. Don't take offense. You have the right to believe that. I respect your belief. I don't agree with you. I don't actually think the book of Revelation is about the end times. I think the book of Revelation was probably a coded screed against the Roman Empire by the early Christian church. And it probably made a huge amount of sense to the people at the time. There were probably, at the time that it was written down, there was probably, I imagine there's somebody reading it to a group of people. And he's like, and the 7 kings went up on the 7 thrones, and then there's like a group of people, and they're like, no, he didn't. No, he didn't. Oh, shit. Like, they all knew I'm sure that in like 200 AD, when it was written, everyone knew exactly what it meant, right? I mean, seriously, there's a guy up there, and he's all like, and he says, it's like, what is it? And I heard the noise of thunder, and behold, a pale horse, and the name it said upon him was Death, and hell followed with him. And there was probably people going, oh, wow, and they knew exactly what it was about. And it was probably a very current reference, okay? And that's the thing, is that it's written, sounds like gobbledygook now, but it had very, very current references and meanings at the time that it was published. You can be sure of that, right? That at the time it was published, everyone knew exactly who the whore of Babylon was. Everyone knew exactly who the Antichrist was. Everyone knew exactly what the 4 horsemen were, and they were sitting there going, oh shit, did he just say that? Oh my God, and but now we read it now, and we just like, what the hell does that mean, right? And that's how these things go. They don't age well. Allegories, right? Allegories do not age well, right? Allegories don't age well. For example, Wizard of Oz, right? The Wizard of Oz is a political allegory. Did you know that? The Wizard of Oz is a political allegory, right? The Wizard of Oz is supposed to be McKinley, right? And, Dorothy is supposed to represent the farmers. and she's from Kansas, and the straw man is the farmers, and the cowardly lion is supposed to be the American military, and the tin man is supposed to be the factory worker, and they're all going off to the land of Oz to see the wizard who's going to solve all their problems, and the wizard is supposed to be McKinley, and the wizard is a big flim-flam man, right? And the whole point is supposed to be that McKinley is a big phony, and the real answer is silver slippers, right? That's how the story goes, right? The real way that Dorothy is able to get home is not by seeing the Wizard of Oz, it's by clicking together her silver slippers and saying there's no place like home. Well, the silver slippers, bringing peace to Israel. I didn't actually see that comment, so I can't comment on it. Actually, I didn't see that. But the silver slippers, right, was supposed to be the silver standard, the progressive movement. They wanted to get rid of the gold standard, and they wanted a silver standard. So it was a political allegory. The Wizard of Oz was a political allegory about McKinley. Now, it's not ruby slippers. In the novel, it's silver slippers. And then I'm getting to... So then they made the story just kind of caught on. It was a fun children's story. So in the 1930s, they made a Hollywood movie of it. And what I think is amusing is that in the Hollywood movie, in the 1930s, instead of the silver shoes being the way home, it's ruby red shoes that are the way home. And that makes me wonder, right? Progressives in the 1930s were not advocating the silver standard. They were often advocating something that was pretty ruby red. So part of me wonders if they changed the slippers to be red to subtly tell us communism was the answer, or socialism or something like that. But I mean, who knows? There's a lot of urban legends about the movie The Wizard of Oz, but it's a political allegory, right? At the time it was written, everybody knew exactly what it was about, and people would read like, "And the cowardly lion said," and people would be like, "No, he didn't." No, I mean, it was, people all knew exactly that it was making fun of McKinley, right? And that it was like, it was like a political cartoon, for goodness sakes. It was like a political cartoon. But now it's just a fun story, right? And it's like there's the yellow brick road and the Emerald City, it just seems like silly. It's a fun, silly kid's story to us, right? The Book of Revelations is like The Wizard of Oz, right? At the time it was written, everyone knew exactly what it meant. Now it's a crazy fun story about dragons, and it's not so fun, actually. It's a little bit spooky and scary. And what's also very scary is that there's a lot of people, unfortunately, who believe it's about the end times, and that kind of stuff is scary too, because that's why there's so many fanatical supporters of Israel, right? There's this whole thing about rebuilding the temple. The Dome of the Rock, and there's a lot of, someone says World War II allegories are still pretty common. Well, that's a neocon thing. Neocons compare every war the United States has ever been in to World War II. Everyone we ever go to war with is just like Hitler, and that's a neocon thing. The neocons, World War II is the one war where the United States was clearly on the right side, right? The Soviet Union and the USA, we were on the right side, we teamed up. It's pretty clear, Hitler was the enemy, Soviets were on our side, Chinese were on our side, USA was on the right side. So the fact that the US government and US media, and neocons in particular, compare every war ever to World War II, that's why they do that. Okay, got to get through these super chats. Alrighty, Jack Rasmus. I have done radio panels with him. I have not studied his academic writing, but he's a great guy, brilliant, an opponent of neoliberalism. He understands economics with a great deal of depth. I have respect for Jack Rasmus, great fellow. Gambling under socialism. Well, first of all, when you ask me questions like gambling under socialism, this is why the beginning of my debate with Destiny was so awkward, is because whether or not you have gambling in a society has absolutely nothing to do with whether or not it's socialist. Okay, I'm just being real. You could have gambling in a socialist society, or you could not have gambling in a socialist society. Has nothing to do with whether or not it's socialist. So when Destiny's sitting there and wanting me to tell him exactly, like my exact blueprint, I'm saying that's not, some socialist societies are like this, some are like that. The difference between capitalism and socialism has nothing to do with gambling, right? The difference between capitalism and socialism is, why is production carried out? If production is carried out for profit, Then at that point, then it's capitalism. But if the state and society control the means of production and force them to work in the interests of society overall, then that's socialism, right? Planned production for use is socialism. Production according to profits, that's capitalism, right? So when you ask me, will people be able to go bowling? Not relevant, right? Personally, I am not in favor of gambling. I'm not in favor of it. And that includes the lottery, the state lottery. I'm against it. I'm against gambling. I think gambling is predatory. I think first of all, gambling is addictive, and it plays into the addictive side of your mind. And it plays on your desire for chance, and it's actually gambling addiction and social media addiction are connected. The same rush that people get from looking at their Facebook to see who liked it and all of that is the same rush people get from gambling. There's an addiction. They're connected, number one. Number two, gambling, the house always wins, right? I mean, it's about making money for casino owners. And it's a hustle. Gambling is just a big hustle, personally. And it can turn into an addiction that destroys people's lives. It's predatory. And in a way, I mean, I actually think that, well, first of all, before I go there, I'll say I know how bad gambling is because every Rust Belt city in America, every Rust Belt city in America, the city's falling apart, people are unemployed, people are, losing their jobs. And so they have this great idea. We'll legalize gambling. We're going to build a big casino. They did this in Detroit. They did this in Cleveland. I think they did it in Pittsburgh. Every city, every falling apart former great industrial city in America has the great idea they're going to legalize gambling. And the worst thing is the taxpayers end up paying for it, usually, right? Not only do they, usually the taxpayers end up paying for the gosh damn casino, right? So with tax money, they build a big, huge casino. And then all the local residents of the city go there and lose their money. And it hurts the economy. And the economy gets worse, right? And, there's jobs there. And usually they're union jobs, right? And the way that works is usually the casino company makes an arrangement with a certain union that they will be unionized. And it's better to have a union job than a non-union job. So that's a good thing. But then usually the union then goes around promoting the legalization of gambling, which is, they're working in their self-interest. So you get the labor unions tend to support gambling because they've made a deal with the casino that it'll be a union facility. And, and the profit margin for casinos is pretty high, so they can afford to pay a little bit of a decent wage. So there's a few union jobs, but then everybody all around goes and loses their money. Gambling sucks money out of communities. That's what it does. It sucks money out of communities. It sucks money out of people. It's awful. It's just awful. It doesn't benefit anyone but casino owners, really. And labor unions kind of, but not really. I'm not in favor of gambling. I don't think it's right. I just don't think it's right. It doesn't, you don't create anything when you gamble, right? If you gain money through gambling, what have you done? Right? It's the same with the stock market, same with speculation, same with lending money at interest, usury. Wealth, real wealth, is created by actually creating something. But having money, putting your money in a certain place, and therefore getting more money, does not create anything. There's no physical economy, right? There's no production involved. There's no creativity involved. Right? Labor creates value. Money does not create value. So gambling, and capitalism is a lot like gambling, right? Speculation, right? When capitalists gamble, it's not at a poker table. It's, on the stock market. It's with big banks, and they call it speculation. Speculation creates money, but it does not create wealth. Okay? That it is the impure creation of wealth. Money creating more money. So in that sense, I would argue that it is wrong, okay? But on top of that, it destroys communities. And it's a lot like payday lenders. They do the same thing, right? You said the payday lenders are in the community. Hey, you want to make it to your next paycheck? Take out a payday loan. And they suck money out of communities. This is the thing, is it's like, you know, as communities are falling apart, you look at Detroit, you look at Cleveland, Ohio, where I'm from, Pennsylvania, you know, Minneapolis, Wisconsin. I mean, Indiana, right? Great example, right? I mean, Illinois, right? All these Midwestern, Southern places, they're falling apart. And so the response, it's like, you know, so these communities are falling apart, right? And so it's like someone goes to the doctor and they're like, hey, you know, I've got cancer. Then the doctor's like, oh, okay, so you got cancer. So we're gonna go make sure that you get emphysema. That'll fix it. I've never known someone with emphysema that died of cancer. So we're gonna, you got cancer, we're gonna get you emphysema, right? That is how they handle this, right? It's like, oh, the community's falling apart. Let's build a big casino. Let's set up a bunch of payday lenders. It's like, so you already got deindustrialization, you already got cancer. So then it's like, let's set up another disease, gambling. Let's set up another disease, predatory lending. Let's set up another disease, predatory and mortgage lenders. I know, let's get rid of the minimum wage. Oh, I know, it's like they just do let's bring in opioids. It's like they double down on destroying communities. It's like the stupidest thing, right? It's just the stupidest thing. And it's like, I've seen this. It's like, it's already spiraling downward because of deindustrialization. And then they start taking all kinds of stupid measures that make it worse and worse and worse. When your community is falling apart, you need a government of action that will step in and start building things, right? The state needs to come in. When the roads are crumbling, when people don't have jobs, the state needs to come in, start building roads, start hiring people, paying them decent wages, start building scientific facilities, start funding scientific research. You need the state to come in and take control and start constructing again. That's what you need. You need a government of action. That's what you need. When communities are falling apart, you need a government of action that will fight for working families. You need state power. That's what you need. That is what you need. You need popular power. When communities are crumbling and falling apart, you need a government of action to fight for working families. That's what you need. And if you just keep spiraling downward, I don't know who that is. I've never heard of that individual, so I can't answer your question. You just spiral downward, it just gets worse, right? It just gets worse, Huey Long, who I look up to, a governor of Louisiana, one of the things he did was outlaw gambling. He built roads, he built schools, night schools, wiped out illiteracy in the state of Louisiana, and he also outlawed gambling. Well, a socialist society, in theory, a socialist society, in theory, could have gambling. I personally don't think they should. That's my opinion. And the last super chat I got was about Catalonia. I don't know enough about it. I really just don't know enough about it. I've heard mixed things from different people about Catalonia and independence. So I just have to say I don't know. I just don't know. That's my answer about Catalonia. Any other questions before we conclude tonight? Anything else? Anything else? Speak now or forever hold your question. Last call. And while we're at it, folks, don't forget to tune in. We're having a great broadcast, kind of a Zoom conference, mini conference on the internet tomorrow about the Center for Political Innovation. That's going to be very exciting. And on top of that, we are also having we're having the Zoom conference. Thanks, Caleb. Thanks to you, Space Communist. We're also doing, the book. So check it out if you haven't read it already. Thank you, Smokey, for the super chat. Much appreciated. Check out the book if you haven't read it already. Yeah. All right, folks. Well, I guess we shall conclude. Ever since World War II, U.S. imperialism and its followers have been continuously launching wars of aggression. But the people of various countries have been continuously waging revolutionary wars to defeat their aggression. While the danger of a new world war still exists, and the people of all countries must get prepared, revolution is the main trend in the world today. While the danger of a new world war still exists, and the people of all countries must get prepared, revolution is the main trend in the world today. Have a good night, folks. Talk to you soon.